Hello everyone, happy Makers Hour. What you can probably hear in the background is 3D printing again. I'm printing some hydroponics bits and pieces. We've been having problems with the drains. There's a mixture of vermiculite and perlite that goes into the pots as we put the plants in, and it's tending to float out and block up the drainage that we've got. So I'm designing some bigger drains. I was going to talk about that a little bit while I'm answering the tweets as well today. So we'll just see what's going on. Just say hello to everyone. And tell them what I'm doing. And once again, I've forgotten to put in the Makers Hour tag. Oh well, never mind. I'll pick it up on the next question. that's going on, I'll talk a little bit about the hydroponics, I think. So as I said, we've had a problem with the hydroponics in that we have been getting a lot of block tubes. The original system that I designed, I 3D printed some little standoffs that drain when the water reaches a certain height. In fact, I can show you now I think about it. If I have a go at enlarging this, I can show you. A second. It's one of these. This one, I think. There we go. Oops. There we go. This was the original design that I used. You can see it's just a very simple standoff that literally sticks to the bottom of the hydroponic channel, and it lets the water flow out the top down the little tube. That tube is about 5 mil, which is just not thick enough. So to get around that problem, I redesigned it the other day to use this. And while I was doing it, I thought, well, why don't I make it into sort of a bell sump, you know, so that it, well, when the water reaches a certain point, suction carries it over like a siphon, a bell siphon, and that's what these little ridges are around the side here. Is that there's a cap that goes over the top, and if I can switch to this one, I think, there we go. You can see this is one of those that I printed out. The thing is that once I printed it, I more or less immediately hated the thing because it's just so complicated. It takes half an hour to print this, and then you have to print a little cap that goes on top of it, and it's quite a tight fit to get the cap on. In the end, you have to heat the thing up and hit it with a hammer because I made the tolerances too tight. And that also takes about 15 or 20 minutes, so it's quite a long print. Put together, it looks like that. You can see there's a little channel at the bottom, just there. I can't really get its angle with the camera to see, but can we do it that way? Nope, no way of getting in to see. But the water goes into those channels as the level rises, and when it reaches the critical point, which is the top of this, if you notice there's a gap at the top there between when the two pieces are laid next to each other, there's actually a difference in height, so that the water can overspill into there, and then that will obviously pull the rest of the water down with a siphon out of the hole in the bottom. The principle is sound, but the design is just overly complicated, I think. So I redesigned at that point again. And came up with this, which is, it's a little bit better design. There's an internal ridge there which will support the thing, and that ridge is level with these little spots on the outside. This time it's an all-in-one print. You can see there are holes at the bottom there where the water can escape from. There's actually it doesn't look very much of a space, but there's more outlet diameter there than there was in the original of the one that's already on there and working at the moment. But as I say, it keeps blocking, so it needs this extra space, and there is actually quite a surface area. There's about just over ½ an inch in total outlet. But then I realised that as I designed that these edge supports around here are very likely to get blocked, I think. So I redesigned again. I came up with this one, which it's pretty similar to the last design, but you can see that instead of being those little ridged edges, there are now just these little three little studs that hold it in place. They have a little recessing so you can mark and screw from underneath to hold them in place, and you have that same little ridge around the side there that lets you. Oops, can I go from here? Same little ridge around the side that lets it rest on the bottom, and then you can screw into these little holes. So that design. Oops, that design so that went through that iteration with the little dimples in there at the end. And like I say, it didn't look too bad on the screen, but when I printed it out I realised that was quite a small space and it was going to cause blockages over time, I think. Whereas this one, you can see printed out, you've got the same overall height, but you've got a much larger area of inlet at the bottom. And that works out to about, as I say, half-inch diameter pipe worth of outlet, taken around the area at the side. I don't have anything flat to show it against, but let's see if I can just do it on that. Nope, not really. Yeah, you can't see it very well, but the gap at the bottom there should let plenty water through. And so that is what is currently printing on the 3D printer. Okay, so we're on to question 2 already. Do you have any plans to engage in makes with your community? Well, I suppose that depends on what you mean by engaging makes with the community. If you mean in doing this, then yes, I'm doing this. But if you mean as in the community at large, then that's probably an issue that I hadn't really thought about. It's getting people together to make. I mean, there's the was it the people in sheds thing that they brought out from Australia, was it? I can't remember. So there's that kind of thing out there already, but if that's what you mean by engage, then probably not for me personally. But if you mean engage as in engage with people through cameras or through Skype calls, or maybe even small meetings that get recorded and broadcast, then yeah, that's something that's good to do. And obviously engaging on things like Makerspace with Twitter is also a good way. And it also depends on who we're talking about engaging with as well. I mean, if we're talking about engaging with, say, I don't know, high schoolers, or with groups of the elderly, or just people who might be interested but have no experience, then that's a very different thing to saying working with people who are already skilled in some ways. Oh, just out of interest, I don't know if this is going to work or not, but somebody was asking the other day about how I was doing camera switches. I can't remember if it was on this or it was a Skype call. So I'm going to have a go and try and show that. Let's see if it will work. Will this work? Ah, we have something happening anyway. Okay, there we go. So we're looking at my desktop at the moment. You can see from the top there I'm using OBS, and I'm temporarily just running Minicam in the background there. And so in fact, if I switch over to this, you can see I'm using my camera to my phone cam to sort of get an image of what's going on with me using Minicam. So this is the desktop where I'm working. You can see there are the parts that I was just showing. Minicam, for some reason, it should have a virtual webcam driver, but it stopped working just before we went on air. So I'm currently mirroring the main Minicam application screen because it's the only thing I can think of doing to get it to work. But anyway, the cameras are, if we look up, there is a camera up here that's held on looking down onto the workspace. That's held on with a magnet just under there, and you can see the strip lights I'm using under there as well. On top of this light there is a camera. That's the one I'm usually talking to when I'm on the screen, but I also direct that down at the bench sometime as well. And the camera here is a little boroscope camera that I've just connected to a scribe to make it more manageable to use, and that's just clipped onto the top of this mounting. That's what I was just using to show the objects close up. It normally roves free, so now I've done that I can actually take it off. I just popped that magnet on there to make it a little bit more sturdy when it was on the portable tripod. Normally that lives over here on the computer, and it just sits there on a magnet out of the way. So that's essentially how I do the cameras. Everything runs through OBS on the screen. You can see how much of a mess the screen looks at the moment. I'm trying to look at the Twitter feed and things like that, so it's quite confusing. But yeah, that's how the cameras are working. This is quite. I mean, the camera that's facing down is quite an expensive camera. That's one of the Logitech cameras. The it might be 920 or something like that. C920 camera. But this is just a generic full HD sort of £15–20 special from Amazon. I think the boroscope was about £6 or £7 on Amazon. So there's nothing magical happening, and the one running through the phone is obviously running through the phone. There we go. But yeah, so there's 3 or 4 cameras running at any time. I can also use the Minicam idea to show things over the tools over the back there. So on the bandsaw or the drill press, I can use things on there. Oh, so talking about community, pulling back to the Makers Hour thread, community, we're talking about local groups, so Linux groups, arts and colleges. Community can be anyone or any group. Well, I think doing that online is quite a nice way to do it. It's a lot less confrontational, I think, than grabbing a group of people together into a sort of a enforced schedule. I mean, even if they want to do it, then it can be a little stressful for some people. It's nicer if people have their own tools and their own equipment, then they can go and work on their own projects. So doing things online is nicer, but at the same time, I have done sort of engagement with groups of people at conferences and things like that. Yeah, it can be a lot of work to get a decent sized conference off the ground as well. So that's something else that has to be considered. How we do? Yeah, so I've worked on conferences and I'm doing streams and things like that. But it can be hard work to organise some of the larger conferences and things. The Creative Commons conference last year, was it the year before? University of York. I was one of the zone leads for that. That was great fun. I mean, there were so many things happening. We had blimps flying around with cameras on and so forth. But, it gave our health and safety team a heart attack when I was trying to explain that we wanted drones flying around indoors and laser cutters and all sorts of other things that really they weren't expecting to have. So it looks like that 3D print is reaching the top now by the look of it. I think that's starting to get the inner little Y shape that you can see on these. So if I show them there, so that little 3 little studs on the bottom make kind of the Y shape. I think it's printing that part now, so that should finish very soon, I think. So yeah, it's showing 80-something%. Oh, we're on to question 3. Okay. Have I missed question 3? I can't see question 3. Oh, question 2. Sorry. Ah, there we go. Question 3. This is a tricky question, isn't it? I mean, I know there's been some issues with this at the moment, and I think I mentioned last week that I now say I'm a fabricator rather than a maker, because the term just seems to be grabbing a load of baggage around it. Difficult to answer that one. I'm not sure what to say. Genuinely not sure what to say. I think it's down to maybe not referring to the maker community as the maker community, maybe. Maybe that's part of the problem, is using the word maker. I don't know an answer to that. maybe show more show a wider range of projects at engagement events. Maybe that's what we can do, but it's a difficult thing to say with any certainty, because there are always people who are going to build their own picture of what a word means. Hmm. Yeah, that's very tricky. I can't even think of a sort of a soundbite answer for that for Twitter. I'm still working on it. Hmm. Yeah, I think the biggest difficulty with working the camera and working it to TweetDeck to Twitter at the same time is that trying to succinctly say an answer, to succinctly give an answer to a very complicated question like that is something you can't really do on Twitter. But at the same time, I can't really answer it fully to the camera when it could very easily fill a half-hour podcast just discussing that, I think. Yeah, workshop yet. I think that's a very succinct way of putting what I was trying to say there. Is just show all of the stuff that people do. Don't just show the technology, but show the projects regardless of the technology, if that makes sense. Ah, 3D prints coming along quite nicely now. So that will be one, two. That will be the third one. So I'll need to start another print when that one's finished, which should be easy enough, assuming nothing breaks. Had some issues with this 3D printer. It's one of the little cheap CTC ones, and it occasionally freezes. I think it overheats. That causes problems. So I've ordered a 120mm fan for the bottom, which will make it much quieter for one thing, since a little 40mm fan in there whining away. I think the 120mm fan will be a decent upgrade. Excuse me. There's some raised feet I fitted to that a while ago to improve the cooling, and that gives me enough space to fit a 120mm fan when you can't get one in as standard, which is why I presume they put a small 40mm fan on the heatsink. It just doesn't seem enough to me. But then again, the printer itself is not the greatest printer. It does the job, I won't, I won't complain about it for doing what it needs to do. But well, doesn't everyone want the latest 3D printer? I suppose, really. Oh, I resurrected a Raspberry Pi today. Good old polyfuses in there healed themselves. So the Raspberry Pi started working again. It's the one that blew up when the power supply connected to the solar charger malfunctioned. And I thought it had taken the Pi and the SD card, but it turns out it just killed the Pi. So that's pretty good. 3D printer's done. Okay. Turn it off. And start it again. Second verse, the same as the first. Right. We're going to print. There we go. Always makes me nervous when it does that. It just pauses for a few seconds. But we have another one of those now, so that makes the third. Okay. So we've got a little cluster of those together now on the desk. Okay. 1, 2, 3. In case you're wondering why there was a different colour, I got bored of the dark blue. This is all very old. Very old filament as well. This is from about 2014, 2015. It's not been stored properly or anything, so I have to keep an eye while it's printing, because there are occasional bubbles and there are occasional snags and snaps in the filament. It's my 40th birthday soon. I'm going to treat myself to some new filament, I think. That should keep me quiet for a while. Caroline says that these are hats for chickens. I think she might be right. It's kind of it's a safety top hat for a chicken. Yeah, without doubt. And there's me waffling away, falling behind the questions again. What has influenced your hobby career? I think actually it's partly from necessity, because either I didn't have the cash to do what I needed, or the people I was working for didn't have the cash to do a particular task, and buy the expensive piece of kit. I remember back in 2000, I think it was, where I was working at the time, we needed a laser scanner, and back then a laser scanner was ridiculously expensive. But the math, I could see how the math behind 3D scanning worked. I could see how the technology worked, and it wasn't that complicated a thing to make a scanner that would do the job. And I think it was a variation on just a laser line scanner. I think I spent about £10–15 on parts and scrounge things I had together. In the end, the university I was working for saw the value of what I was doing, I think, and they actually gave me a dedicated room to work in to build this scanner and work on this scanner, which was quite nice. And that became the spline scan scanner in the end. But that project is long gone now. And it's on one level, it's quite pleasing to see. I get emails now and again saying, "Oh, I've seen your scanner in the past online," or "I saw the article you did for Make Magazine," and we're building a 3D scanner for a high school project, or a 12 or 13-year-old come along and saying, "Oh, I'm designing a 3D scanner to do this job." And it's nice to see that that's being done. And at the other end of the scale, it's kind of, I remember that when I was doing it, nobody had done it before, really, or it was considered a very complicated thing to do and not something that people could engage with. I think it's great to see that we've come that far. It's great to see that we don't have to worry anymore about these things that were very technical, difficult things to do are now much more Lego brick approach that you can just bolt things together. And also the sort of steampunk, the steampunk scene when that came along initially. So we've got Jake Von Slat and the departed Datamancer, of course. That's a shame, but their work was just fantastic. That's some really high level work there, and that dragged a lot of people into making, I think, and it was a big influence on me to see that level of work. Um, and I think the early Mate crew as well. The early team of Mate magazine, the original with Mark Frumfelder and Gareth Bramwin, and the original crew that came about with that, Becky and yes, so Becky Stern and all of the people who worked on that on those project when it was all new was quite interesting. People to be surrounded by, the great peers. It's too difficult to name everybody. I mean, it's that whole scene, and also the burners from back then as well. I think probably. Mm. And also, I think that some of my previous employers as well. There were people who were always very flexible, and in some of the jobs I've been before, some of the technical teams there. I mean, there was a great guy who I worked with, Martin Kelly, who was very good at finding solutions to unusual problems, and the work, some of the projects that we did while we were working together, are some of the ones that I look back at, with the most fondness. Um, and I think I just tweeted that again, didn't I, uh, without having the Twitter tag. It's so awkward. You think you waited? Oh no. Yeah, okay. I'm just going to retweet that. You'd think there'd be a way to automatically add the tag to every tweet over a period of time or something, or set it so that it automatically adds the tag on. But no, that's just because I'm forgetful. The other funny thing about watching this is when I watch the live dashboard, I can see myself with a delay, which is slightly alarming. I was just flicking through the windows on the screen there as I was doing things. So let's go. Okay, we've reached the bottom lip. Oh, I didn't mention that, did I? The bottom, whoops, the bottom lip, bottom lip on here. The bottom of this lip indicates where the outlet starts. So if you think about this being fitted this way up as a sump, that means that the bottom part here is where the water will start draining. Anything above this area is drain. So you can see it's actually slightly below this. It's just I couldn't be bothered to change the print. But just below this, this whole area is void where the water can sink down and come out of the hole in the centre at the bottom. Soft skills. Let's get this. Next question is about soft skills. Are soft skills, public speaking, negotiating skills, etc., important skills for makers? How can we learn these skills? I think these are skills that you need to learn by doing. But I think they're important skills, but I don't think they are necessary skills. It's good to have them, but if you are weak in these areas, there are ways around. If you have trouble negotiating, you can team up with somebody who can. If you don't like public speaking, you can present in different ways. I think they are important, and it's good to be rounded enough to do those, but I don't think they're necessary. In the same way that a lot of, I suppose, there will be hard skills, but a lot of the actual technical skills of making, like using a lathe or using a milling machine or using a particular type of tool, aren't necessary. You know, you can always find solutions that don't require that. But if you have the skill, some tasks can become a lot easier. It's a lot easier to use a lathe than it is to try and turn something round by hand using just grinding wheels and saws. It's possible to do it that way, but it takes a long time. And in the same way that if you're not very good at public speaking, then you will struggle to disseminate ideas amongst groups of people, but it's not impossible to do it that. It just means that you need to think more about how you want to engage with people. And yeah, I think Thornhill there. Don't think they're especially needed. Maybe for promoters and organisers. I think that's true. I think you work to your strengths, and if your strengths are in sort of making particular projects or doing particular tasks, and you're very good at that, then do that. You know, there isn't a need to be for everybody to be a Renaissance, a Renaissance performer. It's just do what you can. You know, do what you want. So yeah, I think they're important, but not essential. You know, if you don't have that aptitude, then you just work without it. You know, you just work around it and adapt your style to work. If what you're doing is worthwhile, then people will seek you out. Not, you know, you don't have to seek people out. And it depends what you're after at the end of the day. And I actually remember the tag this time, as I'm typing. Excellent, there we go. Let's just see, we have a couple of people watching. Hello, people. That's good. Yeah, I agree, Archie. I agree with you there that learning by doing is the best way. And particularly if you're learning to speak with people, if you need to engage with people, the only way to get used to that is to do it. And I think that personally, I think that if you think of something as engaging people or trying to engage with the public, I think you're on a downhill slope. If you think of it about talking to people, if you're talking to people about something and not dealing with engagement or dealing with a public speech or working to a crowd, if you're just explaining something to a group of people, those people are essentially there to hear you, and they're not usually down there to shoot you down in flames. So I think just once you get up there and you get past that idea that the attention is focused on you, and the attention is in fact focused on the room and everybody in the room, and you're making everybody part of what you're doing, I think it's a lot easier to speak that way. Yeah, workshops, yeah, I agree, yeah. Public speaking is easy to learn, you just have to do it loads. Watching other people does help. Although I would say don't try and ascribe to a style. You see a lot of people now who are doing the TED Talk style thought leader type of narrative, uh, which is great for holding attention in a well-recorded, uninterrupted speech. But if you're in the real world and people are going to ask you questions and things, that can really throw you off the stride if you're trying to keep to exact timings and things. So I'd just speak as you would find it comfortable to do in public. To another person, not to a group of people. If you're trying to explain something, just if the idea is clear in your head, then you will articulate it well. If you're not sure what you're talking about, then you will struggle. And I think there is a risk you can over prepare, maybe. What are we doing? Well, this hour's flying past, isn't it? 10 minutes left, so we should be due another question in a minute, I guess. What, 2 minutes? Yeah, Claire Pollard, I think, yeah, it's important if you're doing collaborative making. I think part of that as well is just the ability to teamwork, not just the ability um, to public speak or engage publicly. I think if you're team making, then you need to be part of the team. It's as cheesy as that sounds. You need to be able to negotiate and to give and take. It's really difficult. I'm just going back and discovering lots of people have replied to me and said things that I've missed. Yeah, Jake Von Slat is great. He's hung up his goggles now, but he's still making, and I still watch him working on Geordie the Forge, on Instagram and on Facebook and on Twitter. Oh, it's a quick start guide. I didn't realise that you have a quick start guide for for hosting. That's quite nice. Well done, Guild of Makers. It's getting cold in here. I'm going to put the heating on. Apologies if you can hear this, but it's very cold. Well, it's very cold by UK standards. But we have 33%, so that print's not going to finish by the end of Maker Hour, but I'm going to probably keep the camera running until then. Would I like to be a host for future Maker Hour? That might be a very interesting proposition, particularly if I tried to live stream it as well. I think people might get very cross with me if I did that. I'm not sure I could do both. I'm not sure I could do live streaming and host at the same time. I will say that I notice I've got a much better connection to the internet this time because I don't think you can see. You might be able to see it if I move the camera side. Oh yes, you can. Just up there is a new router, and there is a wired cable going right the way across that beam at the top there, and it's going all the way around to over here and plugging directly into the computer, which is a lot better than trying to rely on the wireless. It also means I can do things like run the camera on the phone at the same time without worrying about the bandwidth over Wi-Fi, which is much better. Yeah, there's a question actually. I mean, would anybody be interested in seeing me host a Guild of Makers? And we talked briefly about this last week, I think, about potentially doing some sort of a live stream. That might be a nice idea. Hello, Kent. It's good to see you. Yeah, 3D printing does sound a little bit like Daft Punk, you're right. Or as Caroline said, it sounds like a stream bubbling in the background, or a running water in the background. So we now have 1, 2, three of the hydroponic parts we need. I feel like I should have done the other one a different colour now. Oh well, never mind. Maybe I should have done a red one to make it look a little bit more multicoloured. Okay. Oh yeah, did you notice I also have a shiny new mat as well? Yeah, it gets better than that. It's double-sided. I can do blue as well. So you just never know how wonderful things are going to be until you watch them. You know, the only problem I can find with OBS is the way it works the keyboard shortcuts for changing cameras. It doesn't steal the focus. It just does a pass through, which is good in some ways. But in other ways, I can see how that's a bugbear, because I start typing and all of a sudden I hit a shortcut key in an application. Oh, there's a form. So if you would like to host a future makers, I would then put your name down on a new super duper form. That might be interesting. I might take that up. See what other people think. Who thinks I should? Dr. Footleg, never mind. I'll do it next time, I think, as well. It's a lot easier this time because I've got a wired connection and technology is working as it's supposed to work. But it'll be on as an archive very shortly. So. How are we doing? 3 minutes to the end. Let's see how we're doing. It's nice that all the technology seems to be working as it's supposed to. I was a bit nervous about doing this sort of thing at first because, you know, sheds aren't known for their Wi-Fi capability. But with a few obstacles out of the way, it's becoming easier. Oh, I tell you what I got the other day. One of the 8266. There we go. Let's see. There we go. Was the 8266 Arduino styly thing with the Wi-Fi, Arduino Wi-Fi essentially. I had to play with it the other day and got the thing up and running as a web server in about half an hour from unpacking it out of the box. It's a great little thing. I think it will probably end up running the shed lights in here instead of a Raspberry Pi, because I think it's going to be a little bit lower powered, and I think I can do more to limit the power on this. And it also, I did try getting it to work with Alexa using the Adafruit tutorial on. They have a feather with this functionality, and I would have got it working, but it used the FOMO or Wemo FOMO or whatever it's called, and that mimics the Belkin Internet of Things plugs and sockets. And in order to get that set up and enable that skill on my Amazon Alexa, I needed to set it up in the Belkin app, and you can't do that without having an actual Belkin device first of all to get into the app. So I failed on that count and switched to the style that I was using before on the Raspberry Pi, which was it will run through if this then that through that server and then come to a fixed IP address on this thing. But these are great and they're so cheap. You know, I remember when doing something like this would have cost, you know, £100 or more, and this is what I think I got two of these for £10, and it wasn't even the cheapest there. It was just was the quickest. I think you could get something like 5 of these for £15 or £20 from Amazon. Yeah, I was really impressed by that. And the 3D printing is still running. And that's it. That's the end of Maker Hour. My goodness me, it does fly by. We're about halfway through that 3D print by the look of it. So I might leave the 3D print running for a little while. And I'll just hang about out here while that's going on. But if you are watching and you haven't subscribed, please do, because I'm trying to get as many subscribers as I can. The way YouTube works is if you're a new, I think you need a minimum of 100 followers before you can choose your own channel name, you know, your own channel URL, and you can't monetize until you've had several thousand views. So at the moment I'm getting 0 for doing this, which is, it's fine because it's an enjoyable thing to do. But ultimately it would be nice if I could monetize these videos when I start doing more videos. We've got some more hydroponic stuff coming up soon, and as you can see there's a bandsaw. Camera, there we go. There's a bandsaw just there, and I'm going to be doing a piece on changing the blade in a bandsaw. Because, well, I did this to my thumb a couple of weeks ago. And I thought it might be a good idea to go over why that happened, what I did wrong, and show how to properly tension the blade in a bandsaw, not doing it the quick way that I tried to do. You know those videos you see where somebody changes the fan belt on a car while it's running? I more or less tried to do the same thing. It wasn't running, but it wasn't rolled into a safe position as I was working. And I just tried to apply a little bit of pressure in the wrong place and spun a wheel round while my thumb was pressing on the blade, and the blade was part tensioned, and obviously it didn't end well. Yeah, this has been Rob Ives there just saying thanks. This has been a thought-provoking Maker's Hour to the host there, to Big SP. Yeah, it has been an interesting one. It was questions I wasn't really expecting, and the questions that made me think quite a bit, so I do appreciate that. That was very good. And obviously thank you to the hosts. Oops. So we're at 68%. This print does go through quite quickly, actually. I think there's probably about another 15 minutes left on this print. Yes, this is. Let's see if I can get this to show. Do it? Yeah, there we go. A while ago, I was working on a door for the chickens, so that it will automatically open and close the door for the chickens. And I was just flicking through the files from earlier on Rhino, and I was just noticed the 3D print of the case that I did for that. I'm going to put this up on Thingiverse, I think, because the project will be in Hackspace magazine. So I'll provide all of the code and things for people. I'll pop it up at the website, and I'll pop it up at Thingiverse as well as an STL file. I will say that I'm very impressed with Rhino 3D. It makes life very easy to do some of these modelling tasks. And if you're an academic, then you get quite a nice discount as well for the full, what's essentially the full version. The discount version is something like the full version, I think, is around €700 ish. I can't remember off the top of my head, but the discount version is something like €150. So it's much cheaper, and they don't really apply any limitations on it. I think it's one of the most underrated pieces of software for 3D modelling that I've seen in quite a long time. It's quite well known for jewellery making and some design work, but as far as 3D making and design, it seems to get skimmed over. I think it's probably because it has quite a hefty price tag on it, but as I say, if you can get the discounted version, it's well worth it, and you get a 90-day demo of it for free. It's fully functional for 90 days, and then it goes into the save functionality is disabled. Excuse me. We're reaching the point where I think we're starting to print our centerpieces again. So we're starting to print these little end pieces, which means it's coming up towards the end of the print. And sure enough, it says it's 75%, but it gets a lot quicker at this point to print. There's actually quite a lag by the look of it in the video that's coming out. It looks like about 5 minutes in total. My goodness. I'm just sitting here quietly thinking about the projects that we're going to be doing soon. There's some things that are going to be interesting to film. I don't think I'll be able to do them live, but we'll probably be filming them. We'll be building some raised beds for planting towards the end of the month if the weather's good enough. So we can plant outside in the garden with relative ease. We're using a no-dig method, which seems a lot easier to work with. But we're just working out what we're planting everywhere at the moment. And then we'll leap into action at the end of the month, I think. Beginning of February we can start to think about planting some stuff like beetroot, and then the bulk of the stuff will go in at March. But they'll be interesting projects to video record, because we'll be working outside, and that's not something I'm commonly doing. That's not something I do very often, or indeed have done very often in the past. We're at 82% now. This is the last of the sums that I need to print. I'll probably do a bit of a video tomorrow, perhaps not live, but I'll try and make some kind of record of how we fit these little siphons in. I think they should be fairly straightforward. I'll probably make a little template for drilling the bottom in. I'll try and make the hole a push fit as well. It should be 12mm, I think. In case you're wondering where I'm going, I'm just going to grab one of these so I can measure. I can't actually remember what I set this to, so. Yep, pretty much dead on 12. 12mm, so it's half inch more or less, and the internal diameter is. We have 7mm there, so we've got a quarter inch there. I think the original outlets are much lower than that. The original outlets were what, 4 or 5 maybe. So these should be a lot less likely to clog as well. Because I printed these without any scaffold on the bottom. So the result of that is that there's a little bit of a lip on the inside that just makes it a little bit thinner than it should be. So 5, 6, 7. Yep. So we've got 7mm there, not 6. That should be plenty. I think that should be fine. I mean, if worse comes to worse, if worse comes to worse, I can always fit more than one of these things. I'll maybe fit one at each end or something. But I think that this will be better than the method we're using at the moment, which is relying on a series of very small holes that are smaller than the pieces of, well, are almost the same size as the pieces of vermiculite, which is even worse because they just clog up almost straight away. Let's have a look. Well, we're at 87% there. I think I'm going to call it at that. We've been going for just over an hour and a quarter now. So thanks everyone for watching, and I'll be back on again next week. I think I'll do the same thing with the with Maker's Hour. I'll do the same thing next week. Till then, bye folks.